In this video, we wanted to talk with you a little bit about irritable bowel syndrome and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, also known as SIBO, and irritable bowel syndrome known as IBS. And this was just a question that came from one of our friends on Facebook, Kate Ann. And so basically, irritable bowel syndrome is a term that refers to a collective number of symptoms that impact your bowel region.
Some people can have diarrhea, others constipation.
Yeah,
There's different
and it's
forms.
signified IBS-D for diarrhea, IBS-C for constipation, or IBS mixed, where it can be both. And the thing that's unique about irritable bowel syndrome is that unlike something like inflammatory bowel disease, which is an autoimmune condition against the intestinal tract, irritable bowel syndrome doesn't seem to present with as strong of an immune response, although one is still present. And it also, the cause hasn't quite been identified. It's one of those things kind of like a non-celiac gluten sensitivity, where it's something that you have a cluster of signs and symptoms that fall into this categorization of irritable bowel syndrome. But there's no defined etiology. Like, we don't
There's
know
no
why it
test
pops up.
either
Yeah.
that you can take. Like, it's just a checklist of symptoms that you have.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have it, like when they eat certain foods or...
Yep, a lot of people have it, and one of the reasons that it can be difficult to figure out is because people will respond differently to different foods. You know,
So there's no like black and white blanket recommendation or diagnosis here.
Yeah, some people, for example, some people are very sensitive to FODMAPs, fermentable fibers, for lack of a better way of describing it. And so when they avoid those, they go on a low FODMAP diet, their symptoms improve drastically. Other people can handle them fine.
In some people, it's more of a insoluble fiber issue. And soluble fiber is pretty benign for people with either form of IBS. Yeah. And there's lists online that you can find.
Yep. But you're generally going to know you have it if when you regularly eat certain foods, you see that they cause constipation or diarrhea. Maybe different foods do different
bloating
things.
Is a huge one.
Yep, bloating, getting
That's what I get,
full very quickly. You know, distended stomach, pain, gas, distension.
I do want to mention though that a lot of people think that they have IBS when they have gas, but that's normal. Like, I think a lot of women think they can't eat anything that produces any kind of gas because it's gross.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a healthy mindset because that's how the human body works.
Well, yeah, and part of that, too, it relates to bloating because women are so keen on maintaining a flat stomach. And it's as soon as you eat food, you're going to have a little distension because now you have food in your intestinal tract.
That's normal.
That's normal.
That doesn't mean you have IBS.
Yeah.
So it's a funny kind of like scapegoat that a lot of women use to perpetuate disordered mindset. Like, I call myself out when I have that. Like, I'm like, I want a flat stomach today, so I'm not going to eat these foods. Like, I'm not like hiding behind a veil of it, some kind of disease state, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And so, you know, sticking with the intestinal aspect, what about SIBO?
Well, what about it? Like,
well, what is SIBO? What's the difference between SIBO and IBS?
Yeah, it's when the bacteria overgrows in the small intestine, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a really critical component because bacteria are what ferment. And so in people with SIBO, they're going to start having food that they eat ferment sooner than it would otherwise. And this can cause, you know, a lot of...
That's more like GERD and that kind of stuff.
Reflux, upset stomachs. Because now you have gas bubbles that are moving through your small intestine.
I've had it before when my thyroid was untreated. A lot of people, like, that's the first thing I check when they have SIBO symptoms is their thyroid function. And not just their TSH. I want to see their T3 because that's what controls the motility part. I got really foggy headed and dizzy all the time too when I had that going on. And once I medicated my thyroid, it was fine. But
yeah, and there are things like hydrogen breath tests can let
Yeah.
you know if you have fermentation going on in your small intestine, because it's going to escape through your mouth, the fermented gas, if you do have SIBO.
I find a lot of people that have that too eat a lot of simple sugars, and so it feeds the bacteria further up.
Yes. Yeah, because most simple sugars are going to be fully absorbed in your small intestinal tract. And so if you don't, if these are being fermented before you have a chance to absorb them, then that's just going to perpetuate the growth of these bacteria.
As far as the SIBO in this particular question and situation, I would think that I would look at the thyroid because there's prolonged fasting in this individual. And your thyroid function is going to be downregulated, so it's going to cause some sort of SIBO during that time when your thyroid is downregulated. That's just how it is. You're not getting the motility. And even if you're not eating, it's still, your bacteria is still functioning there. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all we have to say on those topics. So if you found this content helpful, then great. That's what we're trying to do. And if you know someone who you think would benefit from this information, then please share the video with them.